Your father had a call sign. What's yours, Lieutenant? The war room fell silent. 40 pairs of eyes focused on the woman standing stiffly near the back wall. Lieutenant Commander Ava Morgan didn't move a muscle. Her hands were still at her sides, fingers loose but exact. It was a calm that looked like obedience but felt like a loaded weapon. At the head of the conference table, Admiral Knox leaned back, his arms crossed. He was in his 60s, bald, with a face weathered by 3 decades of secret briefings and no patience for weakness. His uniform was perfect, adorned with 4 rows of ribbons and a silver trident that shone under the fluorescent lights. A smile touched his lips but didn't warm his eyes. "Well," his voice was a clear challenge that echoed across the room. "We're waiting." Ava drew a steady breath. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. The rise and fall of her chest was like a machine. Then she spoke, her voice low and even. "Shadow." The single word hit the room like a rock tossed into a placid pond. Ripples of unease spread in the form of sideways glances and raised eyebrows. A few of the junior officers looked confused, but the older men, the SEALs with graying hair and scars hidden by their collars, became very still. One of them, a commander with salt and pepper hair in the corner, sat up straighter. His eyes widened slightly. Knox's smile vanished. He slowly uncrossed his arms and leaned forward. "Shadow." It wasn't a question. It was a charge wrapped in disbelief. Ava gave a single nod. "Yes, sir." "That's a heavy legacy to carry." Knox's tone had changed. The taunting edge was gone, replaced by something colder and sharper. "Especially for an officer who just arrived 3 days ago." The air in the room seemed to grow cold. Ava said nothing. She stared straight ahead, her gaze not quite meeting Knox's but not flinching away either. It was the perfect military posture, one that said, "I respect you, but I don't fear you." Major Graves, a thin intelligence officer in his 40s seated near Knox, cleared his throat. "Shadow was the call sign of a SEAL team leader who vanished 20 years ago, Operation Kingfisher in the Indo-Pacific." He glanced at Knox. "No body was ever found. He was listed as missing in action." "Others called it desertion," Knox added in a low voice. "No enemy kills confirmed, no successful extraction, just a blast of static on the radio from an empty spot on the map." Ava's jaw clenched. It was the first sign of a crack in her perfect composure, the first clue that this was more than just business. It was deeply personal. But she refused to rise to the bait. She simply stood there, her breathing a steady 4-4-4 rhythm. Knox let the silence hang in the air, then waved a hand as if swatting a fly. "Take your seat, Lieutenant Commander. We have real dangers to worry about." Ava walked to an empty chair at the back of the table. As she passed her laptop bag, her right hand brushed against it. The move was so casual it seemed accidental, but her fingers wrapped around a pen clipped to a strap. It was the grip of someone used to holding a weapon under fire, index finger straight, thumb providing pressure. It was a textbook tactical hold. She didn't seem to notice. Muscle memory requires no conscious effort. She sat and opened her laptop. The screen lit up, bathing her face in a soft blue glow. In the bottom corner, a small line of text scrolled by, almost too faint to see. Kingfisher DECLASSIFID, partial. Decryption in progress, 12%. No one saw it except for the man in the corner. The commander with the salt and pepper hair was watching her closely. His nameplate read Harrison. He was 60, perhaps older, with lines around his eyes earned from desert sun and sea spray. He tilted his head, observing her posture, the way she adjusted her watch without looking, the way her fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready but not tense. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. He kept quiet. For now. Knox brought up a map on the large screen. It showed the Indo-Pacific region, with red zones marking increased threat activity and blue zones showing Allied naval forces. "All right, let's begin. We're seeing a spike in submarine activity near the Spratly Islands. Satellites have flagged 3 unidentified vessels, probably Chinese, engaging in what appears to be reconnaissance." Colonel Sanders, a logistics officer with a square jaw, tapped his tablet. "What's our assessment of their goal? Is this spying, or are they planning something more hostile?" Knox gestured toward Ava without looking at her. "Lieutenant Commander Morgan is our fresh intel liaison. Let's see what the new recruit has to say." A few quiet chuckles went around the table. Ava showed no reaction. She stood and walked to the front, tablet in hand. Her steps were even, not rushed, but not hesitant. She tapped the screen, and a new layer of data appeared on the main map: heat signatures, radio patterns, and disruptions to shipping routes. "The vessels are moving in a precise grid pattern," she stated, her voice calm and professional. "This is classic SIGINT collection. They aren't searching for targets, they're mapping our response capabilities." That's straight out of the manual, Graves cut in, not looking up from his papers. We're aware they conduct these drills. Give us something we can use. Ava paused for a fraction of a second. Then she zoomed in on one of the red zones. Their activity lines up perfectly with a gap in our satellite coverage. A 14-minute blind spot every third rotation. They know where we can't see them. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence was one of attention, not dismissal. Knox leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. How do you know that? Because I cross-referenced our satellite blind spots with their patrol routes. Ava displayed a second screen with overlapping timelines. They aren't testing how fast we respond. They're testing how aware we are. Sanders let out a low whistle. That changes the threat assessment entirely. Knox ignored him, cutting Ava off instead. Where is the validation for this data? I see no clearance codes attached. It's pending, Ava replied. Pending, Graves said with a smirk. How convenient. Ava closed her tablet and walked back to her seat. She didn't protest or defend herself. She just sat down and returned to her laptop, her fingers typing with a steady, sure rhythm. The decryption progress bar ticked up to 15%. Knox continued. Next on the agenda, we've picked up chatter about possible disruptions to the supply chain. Graves, what's your take? The meeting wore on. Ava answered questions when asked, her responses so precise they could only come from either intense study or deep experience. But whenever she offered an insight that verged on true operational knowledge, Knox or Graves would cut her down. Too speculative, unverified, needs more proof. The message was obvious. They were prodding her, testing her, trying to make her break or step out of line. She did neither, just kept breathing. 444. Knox then changed the subject. Let's discuss personnel reliability. We've had some issues with information security, careless talk among the lower ranks. He scanned the faces around the table. I want to remind all of you that a security clearance is not a right. It's a privilege. It can be taken away if there is any doubt about loyalty or competence. The words hung in the air like a threat. Ava's fingers stopped typing for a split second before she continued. But Harrison in the corner saw it. He had been watching her the whole time, studying the way she carried herself, the way she moved. It was all so familiar, but he couldn't pinpoint why. Lieutenant Carter, a young intel officer with a boyish face and a nervous energy, raised his hand. Admiral, I was reviewing some of the older mission archives. I found a protocol violation I wanted to bring up. Knox dismissed him with a wave. Not right now, Carter. We're dealing with present-day threats. Carter hesitated, then nodded. As he lowered his hand, his eyes met Ava's. She gave him the slightest, almost invisible nod. Carter's tense shoulders relaxed a bit. He opened his own laptop and began to type. The meeting dragged on with maps, charts, and reports. Ava spoke only when spoken to, careful not to offer more than was asked, never fighting back when her points were dismissed. It was a stunning display of self-control, the kind born of either rigorous training or harsh lessons. After an hour, Knox called for a 15-minute break. Officers stood to stretch and get more coffee. Ava remained seated, her gaze fixed on her screen. The decryption bar now read 23%. She opened a new window and typed a series of commands. They looked like routine maintenance, but they were actually rerouting data through a secure backup server. Harrison walked over. He didn't sit but stood beside her, close enough that their conversation wouldn't be overheard. You carry yourself well. Ava looked up, her face a neutral mask. Thank you, sir. Your father, Harrison began, choosing his words with care. He was a fine man. A brief flicker in Ava's eyes was her only reaction. She nodded. He was. Shadow wasn't just a name, Harrison said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. It was a way of life, move without a sound, strike with precision, vanish without a trace. I'm aware, Ava said. Harrison studied her. You honor it. Before she could reply, Knox's voice sliced through the room. Commander Harrison, a moment. Harrison straightened up, gave Ava one last look, and went to join Knox. The two men stepped out into the hall, their voices low but their body language tense. Through the glass, Ava saw Knox gesture angrily while Harrison stood his ground. They were arguing. Carter slipped into the seat next to Ava. He kept his eyes on his screen as he spoke in a low voice. Your decryption is moving slower than it should. The archive is protected by a second firewall. I can push it through another channel, but it will add another 20 minutes. Do it, Ava said, not looking at him. Carter's fingers flew across his keyboard as lines of code raced across his screen. You know this is all a test, don't you? This meeting isn't about threats. It's about you. I know. And you're just going to let them do it. Ava finally turned to him, her eyes calm and unwavering. Patience is a strategy, Lieutenant, not a weakness. Carter blinked, then a small grin appeared on his face. Roger that. Knox and Harrison came back into the room. The Admiral's face was a rigid mask of anger. Harrison looked as if he had just swallowed something foul but unavoidable. They returned to their seats. Knox got straight to the point. All right, let's finish this. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, you said you were preparing a threat analysis. Let's see it. Ava stood and walked to the front again, bringing her presentation up on the main screen. It was a thorough breakdown of naval positions, supply chain weak points, and possible escalation paths. The information was irrefutable, the analysis brilliant. But halfway through, Graves cut her off. Where did you get this? He asked, leaning forward with narrowed eyes. These coordinates, this level of detail, this isn't public information. It's from the Kingfisher archives, Ava stated. The room went cold. Knox's face turned to stone. The Kingfisher archives are sealed. They were partially declassified last year, Ava retorted. I filed the request 3 months ago. It was granted 2 weeks before I was transferred here. Graves shook his head. Even so, you'd need special authorization codes. You'd need a senior officer to sign off. You would need. I have it. Ava displayed a document on the screen. It had official letterhead, clearance stamps, and signatures. Everything was perfectly in order. Knox stood up slowly. That file has been hidden for 20 years. It was hidden for a reason. And it was declassified for a reason, Ava said. Her voice was still quiet, but a new sharpness had entered it. Because the information is vital. Because the patterns from Kingfisher are happening again right now. That's a guess, Knox snapped. It's an analysis. It's reckless. The room was utterly silent. All eyes were on Ava and Knox, who were locked in a battle that was about much more than just data. There was history in the air, a history of ghosts that neither of them dared to name. Finally, Knox sat back down. Fine, show us. But if this is just half-baked theory, Lieutenant Commander, you'll spend the rest of your career writing supply reports. Ava nodded. She turned back to the screen and brought up the next slide. It was a map of the South China Sea, showing old operational data from 2005 overlaid with current satellite images from 2025. The similarities were shocking. The same shipping routes, the same blind spots, the same windows of opportunity. This, Ava said, pointing to a set of coordinates, is where the Kingfisher team vanished. Radio went dead, no rescue, no bodies. We know the story, Graves grumbled. Ava ignored him. What we didn't know is that the signal didn't just stop, it was rerouted. That got their attention. Sanders leaned forward. Rerouted how? Through a military-grade relay station, the kind that needs special authorization to override. Ava pulled up a diagram showing communication lines and signal paths with a single node glowing red. Someone intercepted their distress call, and someone decided not to pass it along. Knox's face was impossible to read. That's a very serious claim. It's a fact, Ava said. A fact that has been buried in the archives for 2 decades. Graves stood up. This is ridiculous. You're trying to create a conspiracy from old files and broken tech. Signals get lost, gear breaks. That's not a cover-up. That's the reality of war. Ava met his gaze. Then how do you explain the relay log? What relay log? Ava tapped her keyboard. A new document filled the screen. It was a list of timestamps, authorization codes, and signal paths. And at the very bottom, one line was highlighted in yellow, override code, KNOXJD9. The room didn't erupt with noise, but with a tension so heavy it felt like the walls were closing in. Knox didn't move or even blink. He just stared at the screen, his jaw set. Graves looked back and forth between Knox and Ava, his face a mixture of confusion and horror. That's a fake, Graves said, but his voice lacked any real belief. It's archived, Ava stated. Time-stamped, verified, and it has been sitting on a government server for 20 years. Knox finally spoke, his voice low and full of menace. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Ava's voice didn't get louder, but it was as sharp as a knife. I know that Kingfisher was left for dead. I know the distress call was blocked, and I know that someone gave the order to abandon those men. That's enough, Knox slammed his hand on the table. The sound was like a gunshot. This meeting is over. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, you are out of line. Consider yourself under official review. Ava didn't budge. Admiral, the evidence. I said we're finished. Knox's voice was pure ice. He looked around the room. Everyone out now. The officers stood, grabbing their tablets and files, giving Ava uneasy looks as they headed for the door. Harrison waited, but Knox shot him a glare that could melt rock. Harrison paused, then left. Ava was the last one standing. She closed her laptop slowly, deliberately. Knox walked over to her, stopping just inches away. His voice was a whisper. Your father was on Kingfisher. No body, no answers. Some say he ran. If you want to ruin his name over a personal grudge, that's your call, but you will not take this command down with you. Ava looked up, her eyes steady and clear. My father was not a deserter. Then where is he? She didn't answer, just held his gaze for a long, silent moment. Then she picked up her laptop and walked out. The hallway was filled with hushed conversations as officers gathered in small groups. Ava walked past them all without a glance. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled, 444, but inside her mind was a whirlwind. The decryption was at 47%. It wasn't enough. Not yet. Carter caught up with her by the stairs. That was something else. It had to be done, Ava replied. Knox looked ready to lock you up. He'll try. Carter glanced around to make sure no one was listening. The decryption is almost done. 15 more minutes and we'll have everything from the relay logs. If there's more proof, it's in there. Ava nodded. Keep it going, I have to make a call. She slipped into an empty conference room and closed the door. The room was small and windowless, lit by a single harsh light. She took out a secure, encrypted phone and dialed a number from memory. It rang twice. A voice answered, Veritas. Shadow Legacy, Ava said quietly, requesting status update. There was a pause and the sound of typing. The voice came back. Legacy confirmed, authorization active, you have clearance to proceed. The decryption is at 47%. I need more time. Understood, we'll reroute traffic through secondary channels. That should give you 20 minutes before they can track it. That's all I need, Ava said. The voice softened slightly. Be careful, Knox is protecting more than just his career. He's hiding something much bigger. I know. The line went dead. Ava put the phone away and walked back into the hall. Carter was waiting, his laptop open. We have a problem, he said, his fingers flying across the keys. What is it? The decryption ran into a damaged section of the file. There's data loss. Ava's stomach dropped. How much? It's hard to tell. Maybe 10%, maybe 30%. We won't know for sure until it's finished. Can you fix it? Carter hesitated. Possibly, but it will take time, and Knox is already on to us. If he revokes your access, it's over. Ava looked at the laptop screen. The progress bar was frozen at 51%, the cursor blinking like it was mocking her. She took a breath. 444. Start a parallel download. Pull whatever you can from the backup servers. If the main file is broken, the backups might still be clean. That will take at least 30 minutes, and if they're watching the network, they'll know. Then we'll make it look like a routine check. Standard file integrity scans. Carter managed a grin despite the pressure. You're very good at this. I've had a lot of practice. They went back to the war room. Most of the officers were gone, but a few remained, talking in low voices. Knox had left, but Graves was still there with Colonel Sanders and a few others. Graves looked up as Ava came in. I thought you were under review. I am, Ava said, but my clearance is valid until the Admiral files the paperwork. That means I'm still on this briefing. Graves narrowed his eyes. You've got nerve, I'll say that. I have a duty to fulfill. Sanders cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Lieutenant Commander, the data you presented was compelling. Whether Knox likes it or not, that pattern is real. We'd be idiots to dismiss it. Thank you, sir. Ava sat down and opened her laptop. The decryption was still frozen, but in a small window, Carter's parallel download was running. 58%, 63%, 69%. The door swung open. Knox marched in, his face set like stone. 2 armed military police officers followed him. The room fell silent. Knox stopped in front of Ava. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, you are officially relieved of duty pending an investigation into unauthorized access of classified information. Surrender your credentials and all devices now. Ava didn't even blink. On what grounds, sir? On the grounds that you accessed sealed files without authorization. On the grounds that you made wild claims against senior command. On the grounds that you have endangered operational security. Knox's voice was calm, but rage burned beneath it. Do you deny any of that? Ava looked him in the eye. I deny the description, sir, but I don't deny the actions. Then give me the laptop. Ava glanced at her screen. The extraction bar was at 73%, close but not there yet. She slowly closed the laptop lid. I need to save my work, protocol states. I don't give a damn about protocol right now, Knox interrupted. I care about security, hand it over. Ava's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Her mind was racing. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her. 2 seats away, Carter was frozen, his eyes wide. Harrison had returned and was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. The extraction bar ticked up. 79%, 85%, 91%. Lieutenant Commander, Knox's voice was a deadly whisper. You have 30 seconds, then these men will take that laptop from you. Ava's heart hammered in her chest, not from fear but from cold calculation. She had considered every possible outcome. This was the turning point. She could surrender the laptop and lose her one chance, or she could stand her ground and bet everything on a file that might be broken, incomplete, or useless. 444, breathe in, hold, breathe out. 20 seconds. Carter shifted, his fingers a blur on his own keyboard hidden from Knox's view. The download was being rerouted, forced through a secondary server. Faster, faster. 15 seconds. 97%. 99%. 10 seconds. Knox reached for the laptop, his hand closing in on the lid. Ava's hand shot out, not to stop him, but to press the space bar. The screen flared to life. Extraction complete, 100%. A single line of text appeared, decryption successful. FILES ready. Knox froze, his eyes darting to the screen. He saw the message. He saw the file names. He saw the access codes. 5 seconds. Ava's finger jabbed the enter key. The files weren't just saving, they were uploading. Not to her private drive, but to the central command server, the one every person in the room could access, the one that logged every single action. Knox's face went from white to crimson. What have you done? Ava looked up, her voice clear and calm. I saved my work, sir, just as protocol requires. The room burst into activity. Officers grabbed their tablets, accessing the shared drive. File names began to appear: Kingfisher Full Relay Log, Shadow 1 Extraction DENIED, Override Auth KNOXJD. Graves stared at his screen, his mouth hanging open. Sanders cursed under his breath. Harrison stepped fully into the room, his eyes on Ava with something approaching awe. Knox lunged for the server controls. Shut it all down now. But Carter was quicker. His fingers flew across his keyboard, locking the files and setting them to read-only. Too late, Admiral, he said, broadcasting the status. It's already been distributed. Every terminal in this building has it. Knox turned on Carter, his eyes blazing with fury. You are done, Lieutenant. Maybe, Carter said. His voice trembled, but he stood his ground. But the truth is out. Knox's hand hovered over the emergency button that would lock down the entire network. But he couldn't press it. Everyone was watching. If he shut it down now, it would be an admission of guilt. He was trapped, and he knew it. Ava closed her laptop and stood. Admiral, I will surrender my device now, but the data is on the server, verified, time-stamped, and ready for review. Knox didn't move. His jaw worked and his hands balled into fists. For a second, it looked like he might explode. But he reined in his anger. When he finally spoke, his voice was like ice. This is not over, Lieutenant Commander. No, sir, Ava said quietly. It's just the beginning. The military police moved forward. One took Ava's laptop. She handed it over without a fight. They searched her pockets, her bag, and her phone, following standard procedure. She was fully cooperative. As they led her toward the door, Harrison blocked their path. The MPs stopped. Harrison looked from Ava to Knox. Admiral, I'm requesting permission to review these files. Denied, Knox snapped. With all due respect, sir, if these files are authentic, we are required to investigate. You are required to follow my orders, Commander. And my orders, Harrison countered, are to maintain the operational integrity of this command. If there is evidence of a compromised mission, I have to see it. Knox glared at him, but he was losing ground. Sanders was nodding in agreement. Graves looked torn but didn't object. The other officers were murmuring among themselves. The momentum had shifted. "Fine," Knox said through gritted teeth. "Review them, but this information does not leave this building. No external reports without my direct authorization." "Understood, sir." The MPs escorted Ava out. As the door swung shut, she saw Harrison already opening the files. Carter was at his side, helping him navigate the system. Knox stood alone at the head of the table, his face a mixture of fury and fear. For the first time, Ava allowed herself a tiny smile. It wasn't a smile of victory, but of acknowledgement. The first domino had fallen. The rest were sure to follow. She just had to survive to see it. The holding room was stark. Concrete walls, a steel table, and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. Ava sat in one, her hands flat on the table. The MPs had left her there an hour ago. No phone, no computer, no contact with the outside world, just silence and the hum of the overhead lights. She didn't fidget or pace. She just sat and breathed. 444. Her mind worked through the possibilities. Carter had the files. Harrison was looking at them. The data was out. Even if Knox tried to suppress it now, too many people knew. The secret was out. But there was a vast difference between seeing proof and accepting it. Knox had 30 years of authority behind him. Ava had been there for 3 days with a call sign that many thought she had stolen from a ghost. The door opened. Harrison entered alone and closed it behind him. He stood there for a moment, studying her before pulling out the other chair and sitting. "They're going to come after you hard," he said softly. "I know." Knox is making calls, pulling in favors. Graves is already writing a formal complaint. By sunrise, you'll be facing charges for unauthorized access, insubordination, and compromising a classified operation. Ava nodded. "I expected as much." Harrison leaned back. "So why did you do it?" "Because it was the truth." "The truth can get you killed, Lieutenant Commander, especially when it's inconvenient for people in power." Ava met his gaze. "Then I suppose I'm inconvenient." Harrison almost smiled. "I've gone through the files, the relay logs, the override codes, the timestamps." He paused. "It's all there. Knox blocked the distress call. He had the power to send in a rescue team, and he chose not to." He paused again. "And I don't know why that's what's bothering me. Knox is many things, arrogant, political, but he's no coward. He would never abandon his men without a very good reason. Maybe the reason was more important to him than the men." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Your father was one of those men." "I am aware." Shadow 1 was on a Black Ops mission. Kingfisher wasn't just a recon mission. It was an extraction of a high-value target. Someone Knox's superiors wanted very, very badly. Harrison leaned forward. "If Knox aborted the rescue, it was because someone above him gave the order, or because the mission failed in a way that could never be made public." Ava's expression remained neutral, but her fingers curled slightly. "Are you suggesting my father compromised the mission?" "I think your father did exactly what he was supposed to do. But I also think something happened out there that Knox has been hiding for 20 years, and I think you just forced him to show his hand." Before Ava could reply, the door opened again. Carter rushed in, out of breath and holding a tablet. "Commander, you have to see this." Harrison stood. "What is it?" Carter put the tablet on the table. It showed a live feed of the war room. Knox was addressing a small group of senior officers. The audio was off, but his body language was obvious. He was on the defensive. "Carter, how did you get this?" Harrison's voice was sharp. "The system records all briefing sessions for operational review. It's standard procedure." Carter tapped the screen. "But that's not what's important. Listen." He turned on the audio. Knox's voice, tense and clipped, filled the small room. "Lieutenant Commander Morgan acted recklessly. She accessed sealed files and has made claims that undermine the integrity of this command. This is a classic case of insubordination fueled by a personal agenda." Graves nodded. "I agree. Her father's history has clearly clouded her judgment." But Sanders shook his head. "That doesn't explain the relay logs, Admiral. The override code was real. The timestamps check out. Either someone faked that data 20 years ago or the distress signal was blocked just like she said." Knox's face hardened. "The logs are damaged. They're incomplete. They don't provide the full context of the operation." "Then provide it," Harrison's voice cut in. He must have returned to the meeting. "If there's another side to this story, Admiral, now would be the time to share it." Knox turned, and the tension was visible even on the screen. The full context is classified above your pay grade, Commander. My clearance is top secret SCI, Admiral, the same as yours. Not for this. The room on the screen went silent. Sanders and Graves exchanged a look. Harrison stood perfectly still. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. Admiral, if you are invoking special access protocols, you are required to justify them. Otherwise, it will appear that you are trying to hide something. Knox's jaw worked. He was cornered. If he explained the protocols, he would reveal his secret. If he refused, he would confirm his guilt. The silence stretched on. 10 seconds, 15. Finally, Knox spoke. This meeting is adjourned. Commander Harrison, Lieutenant Carter, you are both dismissed. Sir, that is an order. The feed went black. Carter looked at Ava. He's going to bury it. He'll slap a national security label on everything and lock it down so no one can ever see it again. Harrison crossed his arms. Not if the information is already out there. He can still use his authority, seize the servers, and claim it's a matter of operational security. Then we have to be faster than him. Harrison looked at Ava. You said the decryption gave you the full relay logs. What else was in there? Ava hesitated, then made a decision. Trust was a weapon, and it was time to use it. There's a beacon. Harrison blinked. What? The Kingfisher files contained more than just logs. They had the original distress signal. And hidden inside that signal is a locator beacon. It's military grade, the kind that can stay active for decades if it has power. Carter's eyes went wide. Are you saying Shadow 1 is still transmitting? I'm saying the beacon is, Ava clarified. Whether there's anyone left to maintain it is another story. Harrison leaned against the wall, trying to process the information. If there's an active beacon, we can get the coordinates, get a satellite to look, and see if it's real or just a glitch. It's real, Ava said, her voice quiet but firm. I've been tracking it for 3 months. The signal is weak and sporadic, but it's consistent. Someone is keeping it running. Your father? Maybe, or someone who knows what happened to him. Harrison pulled out his encrypted phone and dialed a number. This is Commander Harrison, authorization Tango 79er. I need an immediate satellite pass over the following coordinates. He paused, then recited a string of numbers, Ava's numbers, the ones she had been watching for months. He ended the call. We'll have images in 20 minutes. If there's something there, we'll find it. Knox will stop it the second he finds out, Carter said. Then we'll make sure he doesn't find out until it's too late. Harrison looked at Ava. This is your one shot, Lieutenant Commander. If that beacon is real, if there's any proof that Shadow 1 made it, this whole situation changes. But if it's a dead end, Knox will use it to prove you're just chasing a ghost. Ava stood. It's not a dead end. You're certain? I have been preparing for this day for 20 years, Commander. I am certain. Harrison nodded slowly, then turned to Carter. Get me that satellite data as soon as it arrives, and lock down those files. I don't want anyone touching them until I give the word. Roger that. The door opened and an MP stepped in. Commander, Admiral Knox wants to see Lieutenant Commander Morgan. Tell him she's in the middle of a debriefing. He said it was immediate, sir. Harrison's expression was like stone. And I said she's being debriefed. He can file a formal complaint if he wishes. The MP paused, then nodded and left. Harrison looked at Ava. You have 20 minutes before Knox takes this to the next level. Don't waste them. Ava didn't hesitate. She pulled Carter aside. The decryption had more than just the logs. There was another file. Mission goals, target information, rules of engagement. It's all in there. Carter's fingers flew across his tablet. I see it. It's under another layer of encryption. I can get through it, but it will take time. You have 15 minutes. That's not possible. Make it possible. Carter cursed under his breath and got to work. Harrison watched, arms crossed. You're playing a very risky game, Lieutenant Commander. If this goes wrong, you won't just lose your career. You'll lose your freedom. I lost my father 20 years ago, Commander. Every day since has been borrowed time. Harrison's stern expression softened just a little. He would be proud of you. Shadow, the real one, he'd be proud. Ava's throat tightened. She couldn't trust her voice, so she just nodded. 10 minutes later, Carter looked up. I'm in. It's a partial decryption, but I can read the mission summary. He turned the tablet so they could all see. The screen showed a document header, Operation Kingfisher, classified, EYES only. Harrison read aloud. Primary objective, extract asset code-named Nightingale. Secondary objective, secure intelligence package related to regional supply chain vulnerabilities. Tertiary objective, eliminate any hostile targets without being detected. Standard Black Ops, Carter said. Not standard, Ava countered, pointing to a line near the bottom. Look at the command structure. Harrison squinted and his face went pale. That's not a Navy command chain, that's not even military. That's the CIA, Ava finished for him. Kingfisher was a joint operation between the CIA and a SEAL team. That means Knox wasn't just taking orders from the Navy. He was caught between two masters, and when the mission went bad, someone had to be blamed. Shadow 1, Harrison said softly. Shadow 1, Ava confirmed. Knox canceled the rescue because the agency ordered him to, because whatever was happening out there was more important than 6 lives. Carter scrolled down. There's more. A post-mission report filed 6 months after Kingfisher vanished. He read for a moment, then looked up. It says the intelligence package was lost. Enemy forces ambushed the team before they could be extracted. Shadow 1 gave the order to scatter. The last known contact was a distress call asking for immediate evacuation. The call was received but never acted upon. By Knox, Harrison said. By Knox, Carter confirmed. The door burst open. Knox strode in, followed by 2 more MPs, his face a mask of pure fury. Commander Harrison, you are far out of line. Lieutenant Commander Morgan is under arrest and will be confined to quarters until formal charges are filed. Harrison didn't move. By whose authority, Admiral? By my authority. Your authority is compromised, sir. The evidence shows you were directly involved in Operation Kingfisher. Until an independent investigation is complete, you have a conflict of interest. Knox took a step closer. Are you challenging my command, Commander? I am challenging your judgment, sir. There is a difference. For a moment it looked as if Knox might snap. His hands clenched into fists, but he took a deep breath and calmed himself. When he spoke, his voice was like ice. You are relieved of duty, Commander, effective immediately. Report to the Adjutant's office for your new assignment. You can't do that. I just did. Before Harrison could argue, Carter's tablet chimed. He looked down and his eyes widened. The satellite images are here. Everyone froze. Knox turned slowly. What satellite images? Carter didn't answer. He just tapped the screen and the main display in the holding room came to life. It showed a high-resolution photo of a dense jungle, and in the middle, barely visible under the thick trees, was a small clearing. In that clearing was a makeshift structure, camouflaged but clearly man-made, and next to it, blinking faintly on the infrared overlay, was a heat signature. Small, steady, and active. Harrison moved closer to the screen. What is that? Carter zoomed in. The heat signature became a clear pattern. It wasn't random or natural. It was a beacon pulsing with energy, 4 seconds on, 4 seconds off. A repeating pattern. Ava's breath caught in her throat. 444. The same rhythm she had been breathing for 20 years. The rhythm her father had taught her as a child. The rhythm that had saved her life a dozen times. The rhythm that had been her only comfort through 2 decades of uncertainty. That's Shadow 1, she whispered. The color drained from Knox's face. He stared at the screen, then at Ava, then back at the screen. That's not possible. That mission was 20 years ago. No one could survive that long in enemy territory. Someone did, Harrison said, his voice now hard and unyielding. And you left him there. Knox didn't answer. He couldn't. The proof was right there on the screen for everyone to see. The beacon, the heat signature, the evidence that Shadow 1 hadn't died or deserted. He had been abandoned, and he had been waiting for 20 years. Ava stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but it carried an edge that had been building for 2 decades. Admiral Knox, I am officially requesting to lead an extraction team. The beacon is active, the coordinates are confirmed, and we have a window to act. Knox shook his head, denied. Sir, I said denied. Knox's voice cracked just enough to reveal the fear beneath his anger. That region is hostile territory. We have no support assets nearby. We don't have permission from the local government. It would be a suicide mission. It's a rescue mission, Ava shot back. It's a delusion, Knox pointed at the screen. That beacon could be on a timer, it could be a trap, it could be anything but what you want it to be. I am not sending more men to die based on your wishful thinking. Harrison stepped between them. With all due respect, Admiral, this is no longer your decision. The evidence suggests you have a personal interest in keeping this buried, which means you are compromised. Protocol demands an independent review board. Knox's eyes flashed. You are out of line, Commander. No, sir. I am doing my duty, which is to protect the integrity of this command. And right now, that means removing you from this decision. The room went silent. The MPs shifted nervously. Carter stood frozen, tablet in hand, watching the standoff as if it were a bomb about to explode. Ava stood perfectly still, every muscle tensed, waiting. Knox's hand started to move toward his phone. Harrison's hand moved to his sidearm, not to draw, but as a clear warning. Don't, Harrison said quietly. Don't make this any worse than it already is. Knox paused, then his hand fell to his side. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked like an old, tired, and defeated man. You have no idea what you're doing. The agency will bury you all. They will classify this so deep it will never see the light of day. Then we will deal with the agency, Harrison replied. But first, we're dealing with this. He turned to one of the MPs. Contact Captain Rodriguez. Tell her to prepare an extraction team for immediate deployment. Full combat gear, jungle environment, hostile territory. The MP blinked. Sir, Admiral Knox is relieved of command pending a formal review, Harrison finished. I am assuming operational authority under emergency protocol. Anyone who disagrees can file a report after we have brought Shadow 1 home. The MP hesitated, then nodded and left the room. The other MP remained, his hand on his weapon, watching Knox. Knox looked at Ava, and for a moment his mask of command slipped. She saw guilt, regret, and fear in his eyes. He was my friend, Knox said quietly. Shadow, we came up together, trained together. I never wanted to leave him. But you did, Ava stated. I had my orders. You had a choice. Knox shook his head. No, I didn't, and neither will you. When the agency comes for you, they will give you the exact same choice they gave me. Sacrifice one man to save many, and you will do the same thing. I am not you, Ava said. Knox almost smiled. Not yet. He turned and walked out, his shoulders hunched, flanked by the last MP. The door clicked shut behind him. The tension in the room broke. Carter sank into a chair. Harrison rubbed his face. Ava stood before the screen, her eyes fixed on the beacon, the blinking heat signature that was proof her father was out there, alive and waiting. You understand what this means, don't you? Harrison said, moving to her side. If we do this, the agency will fight us every step of the way. They'll disavow the mission. If it goes wrong, we're completely on our own. I know. And you still want to go. Ava turned to him, her eyes clear and resolute. Commander, I have been preparing for this my whole life. I didn't join the Navy to write reports. I didn't train with the agency to sit in meetings. I did it all for this moment. For him. Harrison studied her, then nodded. All right, but we'll be smart about it. We won't go in unprepared. We'll gather intel, map our route, and plan for every possible problem. And we'll bring enough firepower to level a city if we need to. Agreed. Carter stood. I'll start gathering satellite data, mapping the area, and finding entry and exit points. We'll need air transport, probably a low and fast helicopter insertion. And we'll need official approval, Harrison added. Even with Knox gone, someone higher up has to sign off. Otherwise, we're just conducting an illegal operation in a foreign country. Ava pulled a plain white business card from her pocket. It had no name, just a phone number and a single word, VERITAS. I have authorization, she said. Harrison took the card. What is this? The Legacy Operator Program. It's a CIA initiative. Children of agents or operators who disappeared were recruited, trained, and given resources for one purpose, to finish what our parents started. Your agency? Carter asked, shocked. I'm Navy, Ava corrected. But I'm also a legacy, which means I have clearance, I have backup, and I have the authority to see this through. Harrison handed the card back. Then you should make the call. Ava dialed the number. It rang twice. Veritas. Shadow Legacy, Ava said. Requesting immediate extraction authorization for a follow-up to Operation Kingfisher. The beacon is confirmed active. Coordinates are locked. A team is ready. There was a pause, then the sound of typing. The voice came back. Authorization granted. You have full operational support. Transport, logistics, and tactical backup are being mobilized. ETA 6 hours. Understood. Ava, the voice softened. Your father was one of our best. Bring him home. I will. The line went dead. Ava looked at Harrison. We're greenlit 6 hours. Harrison nodded. Then we have a lot to do. The next 5 hours were a storm of activity. Briefings, equipment checks, route planning, and satellite analysis. Harrison assembled a team of 8 volunteers, all combat veterans experienced in jungle warfare. Carter managed the technology, setting up drones, communication systems, and backup servers to keep them connected. Ava spent her time in the armory, meticulously checking every piece of her gear: body armor, magazines, medical kit, knife, pistol, and rifle. She had done this 1,000 times in training, but this was real. Harrison appeared in the doorway. Are you ready? Ava looked up. As ready as I'll ever be. Good, because we have a problem. Admiral Knox made a phone call before we could secure him. Now the agency is sending a liaison to supervise the mission. Ava's jaw tightened. Who? Someone named Callahan. He's on the transport. We have no say in the matter. Callahan, Ava knew that name and that reputation. A CIA field officer with 20 years of black ops experience. He was ruthless, efficient, and loyal only to the agency. He'll probably try to stop us, Harrison said. He can't stop us once we're in the air, and by the time we touch down, we'll be on our way to the target. He can complain all he wants. We are not leaving without Shadow 1. Ava nodded. Then let's go. The transport was an unmarked Blackhawk helicopter, but the crew was all military. They took off at 300, the blades slicing through the dark. Ava sat near the door, rifle in hand, watching the city lights shrink below. Callahan sat across from her. He was in his 50s with graying hair, dressed in civilian tactical gear. He had been silent for the first 20 minutes. Now he leaned forward. You realize this is a mistake, don't you? Ava didn't look at him. I realize it's necessary. Necessary for whom? For you, so you can have closure. Or for the 6 men who are about to risk their lives to rescue a ghost. He is not a ghost. You can't know that. I know the beacon is active. I know the heat signature is human, and I know my father did not run. Callahan sat back. Your father was a great operator, one of the best, but even the best operators die. That's part of the job. Then why did Knox stop the rescue? Because the mission changed. Because the intelligence was compromised. Because the lives of 6 men were not worth causing an international crisis. 6 men, Ava repeated, her voice cold. That's all they were to you, just numbers, expendable. They were expendable to the mission, yes, Callahan said, his eyes hard. Hate me for it if you want, but don't act like you're any different. As a legacy, you were trained the same way, to put the mission before the man, to make the tough calls. Ava finally looked at him. The difference is I'm making the call to bring them home. Even if it puts 8 more lives on the line? They volunteered because you sold them a story of honor and loyalty, but this isn't about that. This is about you needing to know what happened. That's a selfish reason to risk other people's lives. Harrison, sitting nearby, spoke up. With all due respect, Callahan, save your lecture. We're doing this. You can either help us or stay on the helicopter. It's your choice. Callahan smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Oh, I'll stay. Someone has to be here to write the report when this all falls apart. The rest of the flight was silent. 2 hours later, they were over the jungle, a dark, endless expanse of green. 5 minutes to the drop zone, the pilot's voice said over the comms. No enemy radar, but once you're on the ground, you're on your own. If you call for extraction, we'll come, but don't expect any backup. Understood, Harrison said. The Blackhawk dropped quickly, skimming the treetops. The skids touched down in a small clearing. Go, 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 the crew chief shouted. They were out in seconds, spreading out to form a perimeter. The helicopter lifted away and vanished into the night. And then there were 9 of them, alone in a jungle that hadn't seen friendly forces for 2 decades. Harrison led the way with Ava beside him. Carter was on comms, his tablet strapped to his chest. The signal is strong, 2 kilometers to the northeast. The terrain is dense. Movement will be slow. They moved in silence, each step deliberate. The jungle was loud with the sounds of insects and animals, but there was no sign of human life. And somewhere in that wilderness was a beacon, and maybe, just maybe, a man who had been waiting 20 years for them to come. 90 minutes later, they found it. The structure was exactly where the satellite had shown it, a camouflaged hut made of woven branches and mud. And sitting on a log outside was a man. He was thin and weathered, his beard gray, his clothes patched 100 times. He was holding a small device, the beacon. He looked up as they approached, his eyes sharp and alive. Harrison raised a hand. Shadow 1. The man stood slowly. He looked at Harrison, at the team, and then his gaze settled on Ava. "What took you so long?" he asked quietly. Ava felt her knees go weak. The voice was older and rougher, but it was his. She took a step forward, then another. "Dad." The man's face cracked into something that was not quite a smile, but a look of disbelief and overwhelming relief. "Ava!" She stopped 3 feet from him, needing to be sure this was real. "It's me," he said. Her father, Shadow 1, lifted his left sleeve to show a faded but clear tattoo, a trident, the word shadow, and a set of coordinates. The same coordinates tattooed on Ava's arm. "You got the tattoo," he said. "I got the tattoo." And then he pulled her into a hug, a grip that was not gentle but firm, a grip that said, "I am real. I am here. I am alive." Ava hugged him back, feeling 20 years of grief, anger, and hope wash over her. Harrison stepped forward. "Sir, we need to go. We have a very small window." Shadow 1 released Ava and nodded. "Understood, but there's something else you should know. I am not the only one here." "What?" Shadow 1 pointed to the hut. "There are 3 others inside, Chinese defectors, high-value targets. They've been with me the whole time. Knox didn't cancel the rescue because of me. He did it because of them. Bringing them out would have exposed the agency's operations in this area, so he left us all to die." Harrison cursed under his breath. "How many?" 3. They are weak but alive." "Can they travel?" "They will have to." Callahan stepped forward. "This changes things. If we extract Chinese nationals, we'll cause an international incident. The agency will deny everything. We'll be on our own." Shadow 1 looked at him. "Then I guess you have a choice to make. The same one Knox had 20 years ago. Sacrifice a few to protect the many or do what is right." Callahan's face hardened, but he didn't argue. He knew Shadow 1 was right, and he knew they weren't leaving anyone behind. They got the defectors out, 3 men in their 50s, weak but conscious. The team gave them water and rations. Then they moved quickly toward the extraction point. The jungle was a nightmare of roots and mud, but they pushed on. Shadow 1 kept up, his movements still efficient after all these years. He was still a SEAL. They reached the extraction point 40 minutes later. The Blackhawk was 3 minutes out. As Harrison set up a perimeter, Ava stayed with her father. They hadn't talked much, but now, in the quiet moment, he looked at her. "You did well, kid. Very well. I just followed the trail you left me. The beacon, the breathing, the grip. I knew you'd figure it out. I knew you'd come. Why didn't you try to get out sooner? Why did you wait 20 years? Shadow 1's face darkened. "Because this is bigger than just me. It's about an entire network of defectors and intelligence. Knox and the agency knew about it, and they buried it because exposing it would have compromised operations all over this part of the world. I stayed here to protect them, to keep the network from being destroyed. If I had come back, the agency would have made everyone disappear." "So you sacrificed yourself?" "I sacrificed my freedom, not my life. There's a difference." He looked at the defectors. "They deserved better than to be pawns in someone else's war. Maybe now they'll get it." The Blackhawk landed, its rotors beating the air. Ava helped load the defectors, and her father climbed in last. As the helicopter lifted off, he looked back at the jungle, at the hut, at the 20 years of his life disappearing below. Ava sat next to him. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, "we deal with the consequences. Knox, the agency, the generals. They will all want to punish someone, but we have the proof. We have the beacon, the defectors, and the truth is a powerful weapon." The flight back was quiet, but it was a silence of accomplishment, of a promise fulfilled. They landed at 700. A crowd was waiting, MPs, officers, and medics, and at the front stood Admiral Knox, his face pale but composed. He watched as Shadow 1 stepped off the helicopter and Ava stood by his side. For a long moment, the 2 men just looked at each other, 20 years of guilt and anger passing between them. "I'm sorry," Knox finally said. Shadow 1 nodded. "I know." Knox was led away by the MPs to face formal charges. The defectors were taken to the medical wing. Ava stayed with her father as he was examined. He was dehydrated and malnourished, but otherwise healthy. Harrison came over. "The agency is already trying to spin this as a rogue mission, but Captain Rodriguez is supporting us. and with the defector's testimony, they can't bury this story completely. Shadow One looked at him. They'll try. Let them, Ava's voice was steady. We have the truth, and the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. 3 days later, the official inquiry began. Knox was charged with dereliction of duty and obstruction of justice. The agency fought back, but the evidence was undeniable. Knox was stripped of his rank and his legacy was destroyed. The Kingfisher files were fully declassified, which led to a dozen other missions being reinvestigated. Families of other missing soldiers finally got answers. Ava was cleared of all charges and offered a promotion. She turned it down, choosing instead to become an instructor for the new legacy operators, teaching them that silence is not weakness. Patience is a weapon, and some missions are not about glory, but about bringing your people home. Shadow One officially retired. He moved into a small house by the sea and spent his days fishing and writing a memoir, not for the world, but for Ava, so she would know the whole story. One evening 3 months later, Ava came to visit. They sat on the porch watching the sunset. Shadow One handed her a new challenge coin. It had a trident, the word Shadow, and underneath, Legacy. They're making these for the program now, he said. For the kids like you who finish what we couldn't. Ava turned the heavy coin in her hand. It's a heavy legacy to carry. It is, but you carried it well. They sat in silence for a while. Then Ava's encrypted phone buzzed. She read the message and her face went still. What is it? Her father asked. Ava looked at him. This isn't over. There's another network deeper and darker. Someone is requesting extraction. Their code name is Raven. Shadow One leaned back. Are you going to answer the call? Ava put her phone away and looked out at the ocean. She thought about Knox, about the choices people make, about missions that never truly end. Not tonight, she said quietly. Tonight we rest. Shadow One nodded. And tomorrow? Ava stood and slipped the coin into her pocket. She looked at her father, her eyes clear, calm, and certain. Tomorrow we go hunting. But she didn't leave. She sat back down and Shadow One watched her with a patience that only 2 decades of waiting could teach. The sun sank lower, painting the water gold and red. The message, Ava said, her voice low. It wasn't just coordinates, it came with a photo. She pulled out her phone, hesitated, and then showed him the screen. The image was blurry, taken from a distance. It showed a compound with high walls and guard towers. In the foreground, a young figure stood at a window. Raven, Shadow One said. It wasn't a question. The photo was taken 3 days ago, Eastern Europe. The compound is off the grid, no official record of it, until now. A CIA asset. A legacy, Ava corrected. 2nd generation. Their parents vanished in 2010. It's the same pattern as Kingfisher. Mission goes bad, extraction is denied, asset is abandoned. And now someone wants you to finish the job. They aren't asking, they're ordering, Ava's jaw tightened. The agency wants this handled quietly. They're calling it a recovery. But if Raven has been there for 15 years, this isn't a recovery, it's a cleanup. Shadow One handed the phone back. You think they want you to silence Raven, not save them. I think they want the problem to go away, one way or another. The silence returned, broken only by the cry of a seagull. Shadow One leaned forward. When I was out there, I had a lot of time to think about the choices we make and the stories we tell ourselves to justify leaving people behind. He looked at her. Knox wasn't an evil man. He was a scared man. He was afraid of the consequences, so he made the safe choice, the political choice. And 6 men paid for it. Are you telling me I should go? I'm telling you to decide what kind of person you want to be. The kind who follows orders or the kind who does what's right, no matter how hard it is. Ava looked at the coin in her hand. What if I can't save them? What if it's already too late? Then at least you tried. That's more than most people ever get. She closed her hand around the coin. And if the agency tries to bury me the way they buried you? Shadow One smiled, a tired but proud smile. Then you have 20 years of practice being patient, and when the time is right, you will come back to the surface just like I did. Ava stood again, this time for good. She slipped the coin into her pocket, its weight a comfort next to her phone. 2 legacies, 2 choices pressing against each other. I'll need a team. Harrison will go, so will Carter. They've proven they can be trusted. And you? Shadow One shook his head. My time in the field is done, this fight is yours now, but I'll be here watching the beacon, keeping a light on for you. He tapped his chest. 444, remember that. When it's dark, you breathe. When you're afraid, you breathe. When you feel like you can't go on, you breathe. Ava nodded. She walked to the steps, then paused and looked back. Dad, thank you for waiting, for leaving the trail, for believing I would come. I always knew you would, his voice cracked just a little. You're a Shadow legacy, that means something. She walked down the steps. Behind her, Shadow 1 watched until her truck disappeared down the road. Then he looked back at the ocean, at the horizon where the water met the sky. Somewhere out there, another beacon was waiting. Another Shadow was counting the days. And tomorrow his daughter would go hunting again. But tonight, for the first time in 20 years, they could both rest. Justice doesn't shout. It waits, and it is coming.